Alright, this is going to be a weekly recap from Monday, which was October the 11th to the 15th. And I had a total of 8 trades. 4 of them were green, 50% winning percentage. Most of the red was the very last day. I did do 2 trades that were just tiny losers, and then I had this one trade here that was completely dumb. My average dollar gain was higher than my average dollar loss, but obviously I'd want it to be much further apart. And what really helped is that I guess my average percent gain was higher than my average percent loss, which kept me from having a red week. And again, this trade here was pretty dumb right here. I was just a tiny amount this week, just $10 because of that last trade. But I am trading very little, as in dollar volume. I've only traded this week $2,800 of dollar volume, which is not very much. There were some here where I traded even less, but I had less setups. This was a similar week, and even this one I traded 6 trades. Yeah, so I'm gonna probably stick with small size, especially with this dumb trade here. Maybe just be more cautious. I maybe after trading so much, perhaps I'm just not that good with sub penny stocks. Maybe I'm just not the best with those. But we're gonna go ahead and go over all of these trades right here. My average position size was a lot smaller actually than my average position size on a losing trade, and that was because of this one right here. I traded $822 position. I did have one setup. This says that my average time in a trade was 5 minutes, but that was because I held this one for 17 minutes. This was a short setup. That was a pretty interesting one. And then it says right here my average time in a losing trade was 2 minutes. Out of curiosity, if I remove this last one, let's just see what the number would be, because that one was a bit of an outlier in terms of what the setup was. Really, 56 seconds? That's crazy. And I have a feeling I think I need to hold some of these setups a bit longer. Some of them, not all of them. I do need to keep improving on that type of thing, but yeah, I had that right there, just $10, and as in did the setup work, I got a 78, a 75, as in did I trade well. This one really affected my trading. I think it was a great lesson. I think everybody does that mistake where they just chase a setup, and then it was also a sub penny, and I don't seem to really get along well with sub pennies. Let's go over all of these trades, just 8 trades, and yeah, let's start with the first one, which was the biggest win. It made back basically everything that I lost last week, which was nice. IFXY for the 11th. Let's look at IFXY. It's a nice runner. I like the price. I like the way this one trades. It's not perfect. It never had like 3 straight green days up, but this thing has been really good for morning panic bounce play setups, if you ask me. This one could try to break this, and then it might be a little harder for me to trade it, because I don't really like sub pennies that much for a morning panic bounce play. But yeah, let's look at the 11th. Looks like it just consolidated. It didn't really do that much, so let's highlight a bit closer. I was in 933 at 1275. Right here, 933, 127, 128. So right in the middle, between 127 and 128. It was trying to form like this little range right here. It did have this level to risk, which was 126. And that was my risk level, 126 breaking. Again, the very bottom of these wicks. This was the morning panic bounce play. It dropped. And then my exit was actually the same minute. And that is 1335. 1335. So right about here was my sell. This has been the case with a lot of these morning panic bounce plays. You know, before it would have like a morning panic bounce play, it would trade back and forth, and then it would do an uptrend, it would break past VWAP or maybe get right under it and then put up a higher low and break it. A lot of these now, and I never like it when it does this, it just spikes all the way to VWAP. Now VWAP is also super close to the panic low, so this wasn't like an A+ setup, but that's basically what I did. I bought, you know, near the bottom, risking this level, sold at VWAP, and that was the end of it. It did do the higher low here, but it's just less range when you know, the setup isn't really ideal, again, because of where VWAP is. It did do a higher low here. That would have been kind of hard for me to be in, but if I keep seeing stuff like that, I'll consider it. Yeah, that would have been hard. Maybe if I traded another minute longer in this range, that would have made a solid risk level for me to consider a trade. But this was a nice move too. 128 to 147. Nah, it's not that bad. Could have been much worse. Pretty good entry, pretty good sell right at VWAP. Sure, I could have maybe have sold for more, but it wasn't that ideal, again, because of where VWAP was. Super close to the low. The next setup is Mr. Sketchy Stock. MMTOP. First higher low setup. Let's look at MMTOP for the 11th. Yeah, this one hasn't really traded that long, so the daily chart's gonna look kind of weird. Can I even highlight it? Nope, I can't even highlight it. But it was this day right here. It ultimately kind of tried to do a nice move, but it ended up being a wick. Let's go ahead and look at the 11th, which was right here. Looks like it just faded the entire day. That's crazy. Let's just keep that in mind. It faded the entire day, and I will show that other part of the day because, you know, so the chart looks better. I was in at 10 o'clock, 248. So right here, 10 o'clock, 248. So maybe not the best entry, but this was when I was in. It looks like it had a crazy spike, downtrends, spikes again. Here's a potential higher low. Yep, this is the potential first higher low off of this setup right here, off of this drop. First higher low. You know, it did get as high as 261, which was VWAP, right? The goal to sell into, at least for me. But that's all I did. It didn't really do that much of a nice spike, but because this thing is so sketchy, my dollar size was just $2.48. I literally traded just one share of this just to see if this thing would work out. And the setup did kind of work. I just didn't really have the best sell. Let's go ahead and go over my sell. That was 241 at 10:01, literally the next minute. So 10:01, right about here. This green candle, sketchy green candle. And even though I was risking 240, I didn't actually wait for 240 to break, because if it were to have broken 240, I felt like this thing could have like something like this where it just drops with a crap ton of range, and that would be super bad. So when it looked like it might it might crack, it might break 240 right here, when I was in right here at 248, you know, I sold, and it actually ended up holding, and that's when it did get to 260 or 262, the highest, which was VWAP, again the goal. But I don't mind that. That was a very speculative trade, just to say I traded it in theory and learned from it. I only lost 7 pennies in that trade, and I I have no issues with that trade. That was a great practice. MJWL is a first higher low setup for the 12th. So let's look at MJWL. Yeah, this one's a big runner. Here is a 12th. It's trying to do another run up. It's actually still holding its highs. This could be a morning panic bounce play at some point, although it's not as ideal as it was back here. The 12th is right here. My entry was 11.35 at 12.95. 11.35 right here. Right here. 11.35. 12.95. So right here was my entry. Right as it had this crazy spike. This is one of the type of setups where I actually wanted to hold this for a while and learn from it, but you know, the issue is that it had this crazy spike and that just threw me off completely. It did ultimately just try to hold this level, consolidate, make one more leg up. Kind of hard to sell something like this because there's no real level to sell into in theory. Like, there's no VWAP target that I like, but it did look like a head and shoulder, shoulder head, and then the shoulder was potentially forming. It did drop back to this 13 level, but it tried again and it made a nice uptrend to 14. Again, my entry was right here at 12.95. My sell was the next minute. Can I like seriously hold a setup for more than 2 minutes? I guess we had this one right here, but I feel like I'm not holding these as long as I should have. 11.36. Or at least if I'm going to like hold a setup for such a small amount of time, maybe at least trade a large position, and maybe I'm just scared and I'm trying to get better at that, but I don't know, that seems kind of dumb. 11.36, 13.33. Yeah, right here, the next candle after, 13.33. At least I did sell near the highs here. It's not with the best volume, but it did downtrend and then hold itself together. This was definitely a first higher low setup. You know, here's a dip right at VWAP, and then this one is another dip at VWAP, and it's a higher low. VWAP is uptrending. It can do some kind of continuation, which it clearly did, at least for the time period. And I had that immediate sell right here. Out of curiosity, what would a sell at 13.52 be? That would be a 4% move, just under 5%, but I did trade a small position. And I guess it's not that bad to trade small size because I am trying to get used to these, you know, continuation first higher low setups, especially some that trade off of VWAP, which I like the most. Maybe ideally I can try a larger size this week. It's not looking that bad at all. Let's look at PUGE for the 13th, and this was a morning panic bounce play. So right about here was the 13th, and it's still running. Yeah, this can be another potential morning panic bounce play. I like this one a lot. I like the price that it's at. It's not a sub penny either. Here was the 13th, and my entry was 9.34, 11.08. So let's look at 9.34. I guess we'll just zoom in a bit closer, although it did consolidate like the rest of the day at its highs. 9.34. I believe it was 11.08, right? Yep. 11.08. I guess it's not going to be able to show me 11.08, but give or take right about right here in this green candle. And this was a level 2 reversal. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to trade off of this level. It did briefly crack under 11, right? But it was very quick. I remembered I tried to get in actually near the bonds, but that's when I got filled at 11.08, which was like at the very top of my limit order. A level 2 reversal. And it was a partial fill. I didn't get my full size. I was going for, I think, 50,000. I only had a 30,000 share position, which made it a $300 position. I sold the next minute 9.35 at 114. 11.35 was the next one. Yeah, I probably sold at 114.1135 because you know, it hit my goal of VWAP. It did put up a higher low. This isn't really a higher low. This would be more like it, especially because it has volume. Here was a higher low. Very hard, but it did, you know, make a move from 11.1 to 11.5. Not the best range. And then it had this drop here. This probably would have scared me out of this. Unless maybe I'm just considering the fact that it's a dip under VWAP and then it has a nice uptrend and then it has a higher low under VWAP again. That could be something I can try to do. It puts up another higher low, although a bit sketchy because I would have probably have wanted a higher high. And the volume is also super dry. It's midday. That would have been such a bad move though, from 11 to 12, so like 9%. Not a bad setup. You know, I saw that VWAP. That's all I'm trying to do. And I was trying to put in a larger size. Let's just see what it would have been if I had my entire size filled. Yeah, that would have been a lot nicer, but you know, that's totally fine. You know, at least I did get filled. And it's still good practice. I like this setup overall. It really wasn't that bad, honestly. And out of curiosity, what was my risk level? I guess if it were to have continued and broke under the low of this candle right here, if it would have broken lower, I probably would have gotten out. Like maybe it did this downtrend here, it spikes a bit, and then it makes a new candle and it breaks under. That's when I would have cut the trade. Not bad at all. ILUS, this was a short setup. Midday, red to green rejection short. Did it work eventually? Did I trade well? Yes. I said yes. I sold 139 cents held, and it was reversing. So let's look at ILUS for the 13th. Here was the 13th. It looks like a significant red day for this little follow-up run-up. It's like it's almost like a number 6 pattern. You know, it does the whole 1 through 5. You know, here's a 5, and then it makes a tiny uptrend. Number 6 doesn't break the previous range high, and it starts to downtrend, which is not doing. It's not downtrending. It might later, but it's trying really hard to hold itself. It needs to break out of this 41 level for it to try to maybe do some kind of an uptrend and perhaps squeeze a lot of shorts. But I'm not like some long-term short seller. I just like showing what seems to be a good intraday pattern. Let's go to the 13th. Pretty nice downtrend. Yeah, I think this is a day that I didn't really want to chase it on the way down, but I was interested in it when it kind of bounced back up and it was failing to go green. My short was 1247, 39.53. So 1247 right here. Right about here, 1247, and then 39. I guess, yeah, give or take right here. I was short right here, and I believe the green level was like right at 39. So, you know, it has this nice crazy downtrend returns, and now it's looking like it's trying to fail. Right, it even put up this high right here, and then I shorted right when it just cracked, you know, what looked like this support level from here. It did downtrend, but then it reversed one more time. It even did break what would have been my risk level. It did go green a little bit, but it was very weak. I have a day trader PDT account, so I'm not necessarily able to just consider reshorting again. It was also a small size, and this thing did downtrend from this 39 level to 37, maybe a cover at 38. It's not really the best setup. It doesn't trade with a lot of range, ILUS, but that was the idea. I covered at 105, 39.06. So right here, 39.06. So again, I was short here and I covered here right when it looked like it wasn't able to break under this 39 level, which had a lot of people supporting it on the bid, and it looked like it was trying to potentially turn around because the bid was no longer at 39 and was starting to uptrend a little. That's when I got out. It did uptrend. You know, I did save myself from that, but it was still a good attempt. Not a bad setup. Not pretty good actually, like in terms of trading experience and just practicing other setups, not becoming completely stuck to just one setup that doesn't always work. You know, I have to expand and try more setups. It really wasn't a bad setup at all. Yeah, and I did trade a small size. I could have traded, you know, like a 1,000 share position max, but I don't mind trading small with setups that I'm still trying to learn. KYNC, this is the last day. Morning panic bounce play for the 15th. Yeah, this one's a bit weird. Doesn't have like the best daily chart. And this is the 15th right here. It's still like way at its highs, you know, but not the most ideal. What I liked about this setup is that it just had a very clean drop. It did get as high as 18. It did get as high as 1.8 cents, so that was pretty cool. It did downtrend the rest of the day, but let's just highlight from here. Morning panic bounce play, $800 position, which is pretty good in terms of size. I should be trading sizes around that amount with morning panic bounce plays because I do have the most experience with that. I should try my larger size on setups like this, although I might consider a larger size on like higher low setups that trade off of VWAP as well, because that seems to be like a setup that not just works, but you know, it's something that I can hold through because a lot of them like to continue putting up higher lows and some of them higher highs as well. And I just need to really participate in a setup that takes longer to make itself profitable, because it will help a lot with my patience, and you know, it's not so jumpy and scary as some of these morning panic bounce play setups can be. My entry was 938, 1645. Alright, 938. Right here, this green candle, 1645. Right? Yeah, 1645 and 938. So I guess the very bottom of this green candle, and you know, my risk level would have been, I think, 163. Yep, 163. Very similar to the other setup. As I said, this one didn't have the best daily chart. There were big sellers on the ask, and VWAP was very close to the bottom, so it wasn't the most ideal setup. I was in right here, 938. I got out 940, 164, very small percent difference. So right here, 940, 164. So I sold right here. I was in right here. I sold right here. Just a tiny difference. It did get as high as 169. It did hit VWAP, and when I was in it here, the next candle, although it was sketchy, you know, because it opened right here, it did get to VWAP. I tried selling at 166 when it looks like it was starting the downtrend and failed, reject the level, and then when it had this ugly close right at the support, the support level and my risk level, it just looked sketchy. I got out to 164. It did do with the next candle, but this wasn't really a setup that worked all that nicely. Yeah, the setup kind of worked, but out of curiosity, even if I was just a little more risky, that would have been nice in terms of, you know, how much I would have made. But I don't mind that I sold right there, because the price action looks like it was trying to potentially break my risk level. Had I have maybe risked it breaking, I probably would have held through and I would have been able to sell for a profit. Maybe I'll consider that. Maybe on some setups I'll consider cutting losses right when it looks like my risk level is about to break, before it breaks. But maybe if it's something like this where it had a downtrend before and it might try to hold itself better because it did break, you know, under that level previously, that I'm risking, it won't, you know, just be a fresh new low and it just makes a crazy move. If it has something like that, maybe I can try to hold the setup and cut losses if it actually breaks. And then while it breaks, sure, it's not going to be ideal. Then if I were to have cut it right before it was going to break, but it would help me maybe be able to sell the trade for a profit. And if it does break, in theory it shouldn't have dropped that quickly, because it did, you know, have a lower level there previously in the day. So that could be something to consider. So not a bad setup at all. I'm gonna get some water. I'll be right back. Alright, I am back, and the last two trades were GGII, and I traded GGII stupidly. Maybe it's just one of my weaknesses. I'm just not good with you know, sub penny stocks, and I also don't really like this stock in general, the way it traded before, just being a piece of crap for morning panic bounce place. At least later in its setup, it was just looking very disgusting the way it traded, but I learned a lot from it, so I am thankful for it. And today was like a first green day with GGII with considerable volume. Let's look at GGII for the 15th. I traded two different setups. Yeah, as you can tell, here's a previous run-up, right? It got to 16 cents from like super sub penny, if the low is actually that, 002. Yeah, it went from sub penny to 16 cents, and then here's the first considerable green day right here, which looks like nothing, but you know, it is pretty considerable when you look at it like this, and it does trade with decent volume. I've had like what, 2 promoters comment on that trade. One of the comments, like, I guess the promoter removed. You can just tell when somebody is a promoter, and because there are promoters like talking in that video I made with GGII on Friday, there is a chance maybe this one will continue to uptrend. Maybe it'll just be like this day right here where it had a green day and it just got sold off. But the fact that this one traded with so much volume, there's a chance that this thing is going to uptrend. I'll probably have to do some more research, but there are definitely promoters, and if they're talking about it, and you know, they didn't just stop right after the first green day, especially after the day closed, there's a chance that this thing might try to run for a few more days, and that might be something that I'll consider tomorrow, potentially, God willing. You know, it could be some kind of higher low setup, maybe. Here was the 15th. 2 setups. First dip buy under VWAP. The setup worked. I did not trade it well. Shaken out too quickly, didn't have a proper risk level. You see, I put nothing here for risk level, and that's true. I was trading this thing, I didn't have the best mindsets. In and out 1107, and the problem is that this thing just had a sketchy, super sketchy, just straight up spike, no real, you know, higher lows or anything like that at all. And it went from sub penny 73 to a penny. Like, that's a pretty big move. That's like a 40% move, you know. Very crazy move. It didn't really offer me a dip buy, and then I wanted to get short this thing right when it was at its highs. Right? Oh, is it gonna break a penny? Yeah, it breaks a penny, but then where does it go from there? You know, after having this crazy, just not completely vertical, but pretty aggressive uptrend, it had a nice drop to sub penny. I think 83 was the lowest it got to. I guess we'll just zoom in a little closer. Yeah, right here. I wanted to get shorts, and then it did do what looked like a head and shoulders. It did briefly break what would have been my risk level, just barely. I don't think I would have covered, and I would have only have had like a $10 position anyway, because it is, you know, a penny stock, and I can only short like 1,000 shares, which would make it a $10 position. But that's totally fine. Shoulder, head, shoulder. It did break the neckline right here in this candle. And then it was like a lower high in theory off of this level. Right here's a lower high. And then it broke it officially. That would have been such a nice cover in like 86. That would have been so cool. Even if it was going to be a small position, that would have been nice also percent wise too. So yeah, crazy run up. No real dip buy opportunities. And then I wanted to get short. I wasn't able to get short. So then when it actually looks like it's going to do a dip buy setup, especially off of this VWAP level, I just didn't trade it perfectly. I had a shitty in and out, the same minute, 86, and I saw the 855. Small percent difference right here, 0.5%, just $2.50. But you know, had I have had a proper risk level, I probably could have done this so much nicely. Let's look at 1107, which was right here, 1107. This red candle, in and out, just completely played myself. You know, maybe I should have risked 85. You know, yeah, 85, like actually breaking and getting the 84 perhaps. Or maybe I should have just risked a day low at 83 completely, you know. And I'm in at 85, right? Or what was it? 86. I'm in at 86 and then I risk 83. That's what I don't like about sub pennies. Like, just a few ticks and it's already a multiple, like, percent difference that is really considerable. It did get as high as 91, but it did do like a double bottom off of this 83-cent level. Out of curiosity, what if I sold at 91? That would have been a 5%, almost 6%. Probably would have felt a lot better, and it wouldn't have been hard to sell at 91. Actually, it would have. That was the very top. Right when I took my freaking buy for the next setup, I'll go over. I guess a more reasonable one would have been 85.5, right? No, 89.5. Yeah, that would have been a more realistic, and that could have been a nice trade. Just trying to get better at these setups. And instead, I was in and out at 1107. I mean, it did kind of move with a big sketchy wick and everything, right? And it did close like right at its bottom, and it could have cracked. So that wasn't necessarily in my favor. And yeah, if I had a proper risk level, I probably would have been able to sell this thing for a nice profit. There was definitely a lot of opportunity for me to be much more profitable. Even with the small $2,800 of dollar volume I traded, I could have been much more profitable. And until I see that I'm actually being very profitable with, you know, the dollar volume that I'm trading, I should probably just stay back and not necessarily trade large setups in terms of like dollar size or large positions, unless it just looks very nice. And I also need to also trade setups having a dollar risk level, and not necessarily, oh, let's throw a $500 trade into this. No, I need to actually trade in terms of what could I lose that I would be comfortable with if it breaks the support level that I want to risk at. So all those things into consideration, that was a trade there. You know, had I have risked a proper level instead of just being in it because it looks like it's dipping and maybe I'll try to hold and always looking like it's going to break, let me get out, I'm not risking a certain level, I totally deserve that. That wasn't necessarily a good trade the way I traded it. I did trade better here, cutting the losses a little better, but this one was just dumb, the last trade. Reversal chase. So once I started to see that this thing was actually trying to reverse right here, that's when my genius self, and I'm glad it didn't work out, because if it worked, I probably would have taught myself the wrong lesson, and then I would have a bigger L, like one that doesn't work officially. 1112 905, and I know where that is. That's right here. At least I didn't get 91, but still I pretty much got near the top. That was my entry, and then my exit was 86 flat. 1117, right here near the bottom. Jeez. Now I was risking like 87 breaking, which was a support level. It did break it briefly, it did come back, and it did get as high as 88, but that still would have been very close to where I initially bought at 905. This was a very dumb trade, and I don't want to put too much thought into it because I know what I did wrong, but I just shouldn't chase these setups, you know. It did do a double bottom, and then the worst part is that I think because I had that dumb trade and it kind of ruined me. We were looking at it right here. It did break this level. I don't know if I would have actually have traded it, even if I were to have traded this part nicely. But you know, all that hindsight, all of that, you know, mental exhaustion, especially when you trade a setup that isn't ideal because you chased it, kind of messes you up in the future of that week or maybe that same day. It all depends. I shouldn't have done that dumb trade there, and I should have had a proper risk goal for the other one. And the KYNC trade wasn't bad at all. You know, that's like a little thing I can try to do better, but these two trades, not so good. So definitely a lot of room for improvement. That's all I have for this weekly recap. I look forward to rewatching this. And if anybody who's watching this has any questions, comments, or even concerns, go ahead and leave a comment below. But I don't necessarily get views on these type of videos because they're long, but I hope anybody who watches this can learn something from it. I try to really go in detail what my trading ideas are and setups. You know, just for anybody else who might be trading the same thing. That's all I got.